and you will excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you. I'm so sorry because I know that you are so upset, but I would like to talk to you for a minute. It's a little bit awkward, so the camera shots will have to fall as they may. I'm going to stand right here, and maybe somebody can give me a chair while we're doing this. May I have your name, please, sir?
Bill Newman.
And this is Mrs. Newman?
Yes, sir.
And this is?
James Clayton.
James, and this is?
Billy.
Billy, tell me what you saw and what you felt. What happened to you?
We just come from Leavelle after seeing the President and the First Lady, and we were just in front of the triple underpass on Elm Street, and we're at the edge of the curve, getting ready to wave at the President. So
you were down under the viaduct, so to speak, weren't you?
We were halfway in between
on the grass,
triple underpass. We were at the curve when the incident happened. But the President's car was some 50 feet still yet.
In front of you?
In front of us, coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the President, I don't know who was hit first, but the President jumped up in his seat, and I thought it scared him. I thought it was a firecracker because he looked, fear. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the President in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the President? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground there, the garden.
How far away would you say that is from where the President was? A couple of 300 yards, something like that?
Well, I have no idea because I didn't see where the gunshot come from. We were looking directly at the President when he was hit, and he was more or less directly in front of us, and we didn't realize what happened until we seen the side of his head whenever the bullet hit him in the head.
Did you see the blood
seen
in the
that.
President's head?
Yes, sir. I seen that. I don't know if my wife did, but I seen that.
Oh, yes, sir. It was awful.
It is awful.
That's all.
What kind of work do you do, sir?
I'm a construction worker, electrician.
Is this the first time that you have seen a President of the United States? Did you see him when he was here before in 1961?
No, sir.
No, sir. You're a housewife.
Yes, sir.
Took the day off to come downtown and see the President?
Yes, sir, we did. We wanted our children to see it.
Were you in the line of fire? I remember vividly whenever I walked over and looked over the banister there and saw across the street that you were down on the ground so that to keep out of the line of fire. What was the first thought that struck your mind?
Oh, I thought it was a firecracker, and I saw the blood, and I had the baby, and I just ran, and I got on top of him and laid on the grass. It just scared me. It was terrible.
Did you see anyone else hit besides the...
Governor Conley was kind of turned to the side, and he grabbed his stomach.
Okay. Thank you. Jerry, if anything else comes in, we heard a report, and I'd like to say here, for the benefit of you folks who are tuning in, who have tuned in late to watch Julie Bonnell's show, that we interrupt the program, and our program will be interrupted all day because it is apparent now that President Kennedy has been shot. We have no word in our newsroom, but we are standing by in our newsroom, and would you work as a runner with the newsroom, and as anything comes in, and if you get into the boys that come in that have been gathering the news, please bring them in so that we can have them on the air. Here is another word. We know, as we carried here, and all the stations carried this morning, the President spoke this morning in Fort Worth. He flew to Dallas, and that coverage was on. He landed here about 1:30, between 1:35 and 1:40. Vicki, did you get the coffee for the people? Bring it on in. He was to deliver a speech at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and he was on a motorcade and only about, I guess, 2 or 3 miles from where he was to make the speech in the Trade Mart whenever this terrible, disastrous thing happened, and it happened in our city. Secret Service agents that were in the car immediately began following the President. They pulled automatic rifles. I was an eyewitness to one of the policemen standing there behind a light pole, and you'll excuse me if I'm frustrated, you would be too, standing there with a pistol in his hand. The bubble of the President's car was down when the shots rang out. In fact, if I remember correctly, when they took off from the airport, there was no bubble on the car. The president slumped over in the back seat, face down. Conley lay on the floor of the rear seat. Wounds in the governor's chest were clearly visible. This is from the United Press. The wounds indicated that an automatic weapon was used. 3 loud bursts of gunfire were heard before the president and the governor fell. Just a few minutes before, Jerry Haynes and I, the president smiling and his lovely wife smiling. Do you have any idea which direction? I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I forgot my name at this stage. Mr. Newman, do you have any idea which direction? Would you like to go ahead? Go right ahead. I'm so sorry that you're so upset, and I hope we're not prevailing upon your good nature to have you here, except with the news like this. Mr. Newman, do you have any idea which direction the shots came from that hit the president or Conley? Did you say that one of the shots came from one direction and one from another, it seemed like?
No, sir. Actually, I feel that they both come from directly behind where we were standing.
Right behind you.
The president, it looked like he was looking in that direction. I don't know whether he was hit first. Apparently he wasn't. It looked like he jumped up in his seat, and when he jumped up, well, he was shot directly in the head. And I don't know what you call it, the mall behind us, but apparently that's
where he was. I know that a few minutes after that, when I came over there and asked you people if you would be kind enough to come over and be on our station today, I know that the police were all taking off up the ramp and over.
Everybody was going in that direction.
Toward the railroad.
Yes, sir.
Cars back over in there.
I just hope the man that shot the president, I just hope they don't kill him. I hope he lives. I hope he just lives to regret what he did. And that's all the comment.
Excuse me. Jerry Haynes, you know Jerry. Mr. Peppermint. Jerry and I were within 100 yards of where the president was shot. And Jerry, you'll have to... There's another mic here somewhere. Can we excuse our impromptu... here we go. Can we turn this... Is this one on now, Bobby?
On the Associated Press, someone had asked one of the presidential advisors or companions for any news, and he refused to comment. They asked if he had been wounded fatally. And this was about 5 minutes ago. That came over about the same time I brought that bulletin in.
Do we have a report yet from Parkland Hospital? Is there any word from there?
No, not yet.
Vicki, will you check in the newsroom and see if any of the newsmen are there? See if...
Are we on tape or on air?
We're both. We're on the air now, and we are taping the program, too. Your first appearance on television, I take it?
Yes, sir. It's
and isn't it a shame that it's under the conditions that we're under now?
Yes, sir. It's a shame.
Let's turn the mic on. I can't hear you, Johnny. What do you want? You want me to move back a little bit? Is it all right now? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the newsroom of our radio and television station. As you can see, most of the boys are out. Bert? Let's see. Let's get reorganized here. Grab that cable over there. We're on the air, Bert, and let's talk to you just a minute here. Is this all right? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you the chief cameraman and assistant news director of WFA Television. This is Bert Shipp. Bert, we have brought the people pretty much up to date. Would you tell them exactly what you know as of this point?
Well, Jay, I was standing at the trademark, waiting his arrival there. All of a sudden, we saw them approaching. They didn't slow down. As a matter of fact, they were going 70 or 80 miles an hour past us. Everybody was unknowingly, didn't know what happened there at the trademark. And then I jumped in a police car and went to Parkland. When I got there, I found that nobody knew too much about where he was hit, but they knew that the president was shot in the head. This is what I've been told now, Jay. The president was shot in the head. Conley was shot in the chest. Both of them are still alive when I left the hospital.
Do you have some film?
And, yeah, I have film at the hospital.
You get the film and see if you can get it developed real quick,
yeah,
and we'll
I will.
put it on the air
and
run through.
One quote we got out there was Yarborough said the scene was too gruesome to describe.
I know.
And I've spent most of my time, so I'll get the film ready now.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring you up to date. Jerry Haynes and I were within about 100 yards of where the president was shot this afternoon on the grassy knoll there. And you will understand if we repeat ourselves, it's for the benefit of the people who have tuned in late. We are presently televising over WFAA television the from our newsroom all that we know as of this moment. And as you can imagine, some of the stories that you will hear are not factual. The story that I told a few minutes ago about we heard that 6 or 8 people were wounded. This is not true because we only heard 3 shots, and Jerry and I were witnesses. We will have film on the air. Our mobile cruiser is either at or rushing to Parkland Hospital. We will have word from there. There was a gentleman who was an eyewitness. Helen, is he here? Mr. Nunley, would you come in, please? When I first looked over the balcony to where the chaos was taking place, this gentleman and his wife and 2 children were on the grass. Now, once again, if you joined us originally when we cut into the program about 1/4 to 1 o'clock, you heard his statement. Mr. Nunley, would you tell us once again exactly what... Mr. Newman, I'm sorry. Look right there. Mr. Newman, will you tell us exactly what you know?
Well, my wife and my 2 sons were standing at the curb looking at the president approaching us, and we heard a blast, and the president looked like that Rike jumped up in his seat, and by that time he was directly in front of us, and then we seen him get shot in the side of the head, and he fell back in the seat, and Governor Connolly was holding his stomach.
And the shots were almost simultaneously, weren't they?
Yes, sir, they were probably 10 seconds apart.
Do you know who fired the 3rd shot?
I didn't hear a third. I don't recall a 3rd shot. There may have been. My family hit the ground, and I don't recall a 3rd shot. I just couldn't. I'm not certain of that. I do know I heard 2 shots.
Yeah, I heard 3. I know there were 3.
Well,
yeah, I said to Jerry after the 2nd shot, I said, my God, those are gunshots. And sure enough, they were, unfortunately. Let me bring you up to date now. Yeah, I understand that we're having trouble in here with a pickup, so we'll move back to the studio. Is that correct? Just a minute. Ed, what is it you said? This is Ed Pfeiffer, our station manager. Excuse me just a minute. You want to go have a cup of coffee, and we'll be right back.
It might be better, Jay, if we move this back into the studio.
Okay.
In that it's very difficult to hear on the air.
The audio's bad? Okay, good. Okay, we'll move back in the studio. Jerry is standing by in there now. Let's see. Bert, as soon as the film is ready, you'll let us know so we can run it.
Jay, has ABC called from New York?
I have no idea. Okay, let's go back in the studio.
feeding both networks.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Newman, would you come in, please, and let me get your account of your eyewitness. You just sit right over here. And the little boy. Did you get some coffee finally?
I don't drink coffee.
Well, would you like to have something? I know that you...
No, my stomach's kind of churning, and I'm afraid that I won't drink it.
Mrs. Nunley.
No, Newman.
Newman, I've been calling you. I'm sorry. I don't even remember my own name, really.
It's terrible.
Tell me what happened.
We were standing next to the curb so the children could see the president, and the car was just up a piece from us, and this shot fired out, and I thought it was a firecracker. And the president kind of raised up in his seat, and I thought, you know, he was kind of going along with a gag or something. And then all of a sudden this next one popped, and Governor Connolly grabbed his stomach and kind of laid over to the side. And then another one, it was just all so fast, and President Kennedy reached up and looked like he grabbed his ear, and blood just started gushing out. And my husband said, "Quick, get down." And I grabbed the baby, and we ran and laid down on the grass, and I got on top of him. It was just right by us when it all happened, just right in front of us.
Well, when I saw you looking over the balcony there, you and your husband and your 2 little children. Who's this one now?
This is James Clayton.
Hi, baby.
Can you say hi? He's got some candy.
What you doing?
He didn't talk.
He's cute. He didn't say anything?
Oh, he can talk. He can say thank you.
Have you seen President Kennedy before?
We were out at the airport, and we didn't get a very good view of him. And so we decided we'd try to get downtown to see him, because Billy, that's our youngest son, is getting old enough that he remembers things like that, and we wanted him to be able to say that he saw President Kennedy. And
now he will be able to say that he saw President Kennedy when he was shot.
Yes, he's already saying, "Mother, why would someone want to shoot President Kennedy?" Children, you don't realize how they catch on to things, but he's already talking about why would they want to kill him, and that's a question that everyone will
You didn't
be
see anybody?
No, it happened so fast that you didn't have a chance to to see anything. It just was too fast.
Well, thank you for coming down. I appreciate your time very much, and I know that you're upset, and I hope that we didn't embarrass you in any way.
No.
And good luck to you and your family and to your
Thank
two little
you.
boys, and tell your husband, too, that we appreciate his time and trouble very much. A gentleman just walked in our studio that I am meeting for the first time as well as you. This is WFA TV in Dallas, Texas. May I have your name, please, sir?
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
Mr. Zapruder?
Zapruder, yes, sir.
Zapruder. And would you tell us your story, please, sir?
I got out in, about a half hour earlier and get into a good spot to shoot some pictures. And I found a spot, one of these concrete blocks that I have down near that park near the underpass. And I got on top there. There was another girl from my office. She was right behind me. And as I was shooting, as the president was coming down from Houston Street making his turn, it was about halfway down there, I heard a shot. And he slumped to the side like this. Then I heard another shot or two. I couldn't say whether it was one or two. And I saw his head practically open up, all blood and everything. And I kept on shooting. That's about all. I'm just sick again.
I think that pretty well expresses the entire feelings of the whole world.
Terrible.
You have the film in your camera. We'll try
Yes, I brought it on the studio now.
We'll try to get that processed and have it as soon as possible. Right now, we have videotape. A picture of the building of where the bullet came from. Let's take the picture first, then the videotape. Oh, this is videotape now. This is a picture of the hearse leaving Parkland Hospital with President Kennedy's body. As I understand it, the body is being taken to one of the funeral homes here in Dallas. All right, Bob, that pretty well covers it, I think. This is the same hospital that President Kennedy visited in his visit here in 1961. It is not? Excuse me. This is the outside shot of the hospital and the people who are gathered there, all stunned in the realization that President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas today. Now we have a picture of the building. There's a picture of the building that one of the boys took, showing possibly one of the windows that was used. The top right hand. Okay, which one was it? Let's see if we can figure it out. There it is. There is a picture of the window where the gun was allegedly fired from that killed President Kennedy
Been in the line of fire.
today. Excuse me, go ahead, sir.
I must have been the line of fire where I see now the picture where I was. I was right on that concrete block, as I said. And as I explained before, it was a sickening scene. At first I thought perhaps it sounded like somebody make a joke. You hear a shot and somebody grabs their stomach.
I was about 100 yards away from the boy and I walked over to see President Kennedy. We were about 100 yards away, and it sounded like there were 3 shots. And after the first couple, I said, my God, they've shot the president. And then we walked over and looked down and could see the people on the grass there. And I imagine you were one of the people that we saw there underneath the viaduct. This happened this afternoon about, what time? 12:35. The president died.
Something like it.
The president died at 1 o'clock. They sounded like, at first they sounded like firecrackers, and somebody next to us said they're shooting off fireworks, but then we realized, it didn't take but a minute to realize that they were loud reports, and for those of you who are familiar with hearing a rifle shot, it was the recognizable sound. The videotape that we have, Bobby, what do you have now? Okay, that completes the videotape coverage for the moment. We will have film back in about 15 minutes of the arrest of a person who could be the person who shot the policeman or the Secret Service man or Conley or President Kennedy, and we'll have that in just a moment. Now let's go back to ABC in New York.
As the police and investigators for the Warren Commission reconstructed the Dallas story, Oswald fired his rifle from the 6th floor of the school book depository building. Yet, a few minutes later, possibly less than 2 minutes later, he was stopped by an armed policeman and identified by his own boss on the 2nd floor and the other side of the building. The policeman's name was Marrion Baker.
I heard those shots come off, and they seemed like they was high, and they were directly ahead of me. And as I tried to figure out where they came from, and the building that I had in mind was directly ahead of me, and that was the Texas Book Depository building. As I entered the building there, I asked some of the people that were standing around there where the stairs or elevator was. And there was a man who spoke up and said he was the building manager and he'd show me.
I realized that he didn't know the layout of the building, so I ran in with him. It was just a matter of seconds after the third shot, and we ran across the shipping room floor, stopped at the elevators.
And we couldn't get that service elevator working, and he said, well, we use the stairs, and he turned around and immediately went up the stairs.
We ran on up the first flight to the 2nd floor, and the officer looked in the snack bar adjacent to our office.
And I kind of looked off to the right over there through a doorway and saw an image of a man walking away through that doorway. And when I got to the doorway, he was on down there a little bit, and I hollered at him and asked him to come back.
The officer with me had a gun in his hand, and he threw the gun toward the middle of Oswald, and he looked probably a little startled, like anybody else would if you just put a gun in his stomach all at once, which I thought was natural. But
I turned around and asked him if the man worked for him, and if he knew him. And he said, yes, says he works for me, and I know him. And at that time, the man never did say anything. I never did say anything further to him. I turned around and went on up the stairs to the 3rd floor.
And this man that you saw later turned out to be Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yes, sir, he did.
Officer Baker, as you think back now to November 22nd, would you hazard a guess as to the time you heard these shots, and the time it took you to get into the building and go up the stairs, and the time when you first saw Lee Harvey Oswald?
I believe, excuse me, from the time that I heard those shots and time I ran into that building, entered the lobby, and made it up to the 2nd floor, it was approximately a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And that would be pretty close to it.
In your testimony before the Warren Commission, was this reenacted, this timing?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell me how you did it?
Well, we went back to the same day that we figured what I did that particular day, and we tried to get to the spot where I thought I first heard the shots. And from there, we took it and we did everything, reenacted the whole situation there, the entrance into the building, and the talk we had between the building manager and myself, and then we went on back through the building, and we tried to get the service elevator down, and we then went on up the stairs, and that, I believe, somewhere around a minute and a half was our timing on it.
As you recall it, does that seem like a reasonable length of time for him to have been able to do those things? He could have done it if he'd have been awful fast, or if he'd pre-planned it right away. But the ceilings are low on each floor, and the stairways do not have too many steps on them.
Now, we've told you a bit about the prime suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. He's 24-year-old Lee Oswald, reported to have been a former Marine, and we'll have in a moment an interview with the housekeeper of Lee Oswald. Is that about ready, Joe?
Ready.
All right. We take you now, Joe, where is the housekeeper located? Let's see now. At 1026 North Beckley in the Oak Cliff area of Dallas. So we take you there now.
Mrs. Roberts, did you have a man registered there as O.H. Lee?
Yes, so that's why he had registered here.
And that's the man you now know to be Lee Oswald, is that right?
Yes, so that's what is the same one that showed on the television.
That's the one that showed on television. Now, there have been some officers...
I'll make you recognize him when the next deputy sheriff was here.
The deputy sheriff was there.
Well, I guess his deputy sheriff, Will Frick, sent him out.
They came out from the police department or the sheriff's office. How long had Mr. Lee lived there?
Since the 14th of October.
Did he live there alone?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what his occupation was?
No, I don't. I never heard him say. He didn't talk to nobody much.
When was the last time you saw him?
Today, after I heard the president was shot.
You saw him today?
Yes.
And where did you see him?
He was here in the house.
Oh, and what happened? Can you tell us?
Well, I had to make it clear, I had a telephone call. I do all the work myself. A friend of mine called me and said, President Kennedy's been shot. I said, oh, you're lying. He said, go turn on your television. And I went and turned on the television. While I did, he rushed in the shirt sleeve and got a short coat and went back out.
Oh, he just came in and out. Mm-hmm. Did he seem distraught, hurried, or what?
Well, he just acted like he was in a hurry.
And what did you do? Did you call the police then, or?
No, sir, I didn't know nothing. I didn't see.
You had no idea at all that there was any connection between the two men?
No, whatever. I didn't have any idea. And I spoke to him, and he just ignored me.
I see.
But that's nothing unusual. Sometimes you speak to him, sometimes you didn't. I didn't call him because I didn't know who killed him. I just turned the TV on.
And this, but he came in and went out. That was this afternoon, I understand.
That was this afternoon after a friend of mine called me and said President Kennedy's been shot, and I went in and turned on the television. And while I was there getting this straightened out, he come in, and I said, well, you sure are in a hurry, and he never answered me.
Excuse me, go ahead.
And he come in, got a short gray coat, and went on back out in a hurry, and when I looked out the window, he was standing at the bus stop. So there's a bus stop here at the door.
Waiting for a bus?
I suppose so, but I didn't see him board a bus.
And that was the last time you saw the man you knew as O.H. Lee, and has since been identified to you as Lee Oswald. Thank you very much.
And here, Gordon, is a late report from KLIF's Gary DeLawn at police headquarters.
Captain Wilfritz just informed reporters that charges have been filed against Lee Oswald for the murder of patrolman J.D. Tippett this afternoon in Oak Cliff. Captain Fritz also stated that Oswald has been definitely established being in the Texas School Depository about the time that the president was killed. He has not signed a confession.
This is Mrs. Jean Hill of Dallas. Could you tell us what you saw?
Yes, Mary and I had come down to see the president this morning, and we tried to get a place where we could be away from everyone, and we, I guess, succeeded as the car came down the hill toward us. he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat. They had a little dog between them looking at it. And just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up, and just as he looked up, 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and this real odd look came over his face, and he pitched forward onto her lap. And she jumped up over him at that and screamed and said, "My God, he's been shot." And there was just an instantaneous, sort of an instant's pause, and in the motorcade it momentarily halted, and 3 or 4 more shots rang out, and they sped away real quickly. And by that time I became aware of Mary tugging on my foot saying, "Get down, they're shooting." And it hadn't registered. I'd been so busy looking at the president.
So you were in a very advantageous spot to see the president.
To see the president, but also to get shot.
How do you feel now? It's been several hours later. You've talked to the police, and you've given your story several times. Do you still believe that something like this really did happen to you?
I don't think I ever could have believed it unless I had actually seen it. And when I saw the look come across his face, I knew that he'd been hit. But I don't think I could have believed it if I hadn't been right there and hadn't seen it.
Well, you're going to have to talk to the FBI now, and I understand you have some home chores as well.
Breakfast dishes and everything.
I think there are an awful lot of homes here in Dallas that have breakfast dishes to be done today.
Well, that's right. But I made a call to my friend in Oklahoma, and he told our governor of Oklahoma right away. Guess that's the first thing I wanted to do, was get those people in Oklahoma told about it.
Thank you very much.
There were many witnesses to the assassination, many of them people who had come to town early in the day to find a place to watch the president and the First Lady, and I talked to one who saw it happen and took a picture.
And I took the picture. It so happened my picture, when I took it, was at the same instant that the president was hit. And that does show in my picture.
What does the picture look like?
It shows the president. He slumped. Jackie Kennedy was leaning towards him to see. I guess it all happened so suddenly. I don't think anyone realized, what had happened.
Did you realize what had happened when you heard the shot?
No, I didn't. There was 3 or 4 real close together. And it was, must have been the first one that shot him, because that was the time I took the picture. And during that time, after I took the picture, and the shots were still being fired, I decided I'd better get on the ground.
Did people lie down on the ground?
I just know about myself and the ones right close to me. Well, really, I just know about myself.
You did lie down?
I did. I was no more than 15 foot from the car and in line of fire, evidently.
Did Mrs. Kennedy scream on the first shot?
I don't know about the first shot, but she did scream. She says, "My God, he's been hit, or he's been shot."
And the president fell in Mrs. Kennedy's arms?
No, I think he just slumped into the seat. She jumped up over him, and during the time when she jumped up, of course, the car sped away real fast.
Now, the picture you took, I understand the FBI has it now.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you very much.
In addition, there were some 8mm color motion pictures taken at the time, and these also are in the hands of the FBI and the Secret Service.
Excuse me. We have a sound on film interview now with one of the ambulance drivers. It lasts a minute or so, so let's run that now.
Aubrey, what brought you to Parkland Hospital in the first place?
We picked up a patient on North Houston there, an epileptic, and took him to Parkland. We was waiting for the patient to be signed in at the time everything took place here.
What happened?
Well, first of all, these two men come running in. One of them had a large, what appeared to be a machine gun, and they was hollering for stretchers and cots and everything, and to me it appeared that there was some lunacy or something, and immediately after that, the Vice President of the United States came in. He was very pale. Some Secret Service men was walking him in at the time.
And did the President come in?
Yes.
And then what did they do with the President?
They took him on back to one of the trundle rooms in the emergency room there. Before the President come in, the Governor, they brought him in first.
What happened after this?
Well, then the President come in immediately behind him, and after he come in, his wife was behind him, and they took them both of them back to the trundle room at Parkland there.
Can you give us any of the intimate details?
You mean after they brought him in?
Yes.
Well, of course, they run everyone out of the emergency room of the hospital completely on the first floor there, and they told a rider and I to stand by at the rear of our ambulance in case the President or someone had to be removed from the hospital to another hospital. And we stood by there until later on they come out and told us that we would have to help remove the remains into a casket.
Dennis, what happened to the hearse?
We were standing by there. One of the Secret Service men come up and told us that we would have to help putting the President into the casket and getting him to the airport. And at that time, right after he had told us that, Mr. O'Neill came up in our 64 Cadillac hearse, and we unloaded and took the casket into where the President was. And before we put the President in his casket, the President's wife took her wedding band. It looked to be like her wedding band off of her finger and put it on the President's and kissed his hand. And then he left, and we took him out and put him into the hearse. And one of the Secret Service men, about 2 or 3 of them got into the hearse and just drove off and left Mr. O'Neill and the rest of us just standing there.
At this point, ABC's Director of Radio News, Tom O'Brien, came on the line from WFAA Dallas with an interview. The young man with him was Aubrey Rike, an attendant at Parkland Memorial Hospital.
Would you, without any prompting from me, tell me the incidents that occurred this afternoon over at the hospital after the President of the United States died?
We would start out where we was at the hospital with another patient when someone come in calling for some letters, carriages to haul someone. Immediately following that, the Vice President of the United States come walking in very pale-like. And I guess 30 seconds elapsed before the carriages arrived back to the position we was at the hospital. And first come the Governor of Texas, and then immediately following him was, on the litter, was the President. His wife was following behind him. She was completely covered in blood. From the waist down, it looked like her legs and her hands and everything was very bloody. And following that, Secret Service run everyone outside. They had a standby at our ambulance, on the ambulance dock, in case one of them had to be transferred to another hospital. We stood by for approximately 50 minutes to an hour, and they come out and notify us that we would have to help load the President into the ambulance. At that time, that's when we first was confirmed that the President was dead. One of our hearses from the funeral home arrived with a casket. We took it in and prepared to load the President into the casket. First of all, his wife, Mrs. Kennedy, came into the room and took a ring off her finger and slipped it onto the President's finger, kissed his hand, and she left, and then immediately afterwards we loaded the President into the casket.
At 10th and Patton, Mrs. Markham saw Oswald approach.
Well, this man was walking along the sidewalk on 10th Street. This police car was driving very slow down 10th Street.
And what happened?
Well, the man kept walking, just like I say, with his hands down in his head. I didn't pay him no mind, I didn't care. And this police car kept coming on, and finally he stopped, and the man stopped. And whether the policeman say, come over to the car, talk to him, I don't know, but he went.
Was he on the driver's side or on the other side?
On the other side.
And did he stick his head in the window?
Yes, sir. He folded his hands like this. He put them in through the window, up on the window, and he leaned over like this.
What do you remember about this man? Was he a big man or a small man? Or what?
No, he wasn't a very big man. He was short, kind of short, as far as I remember.
Well, now, was he still standing there when Officer Tippett got out of the police car?
Well, he got out of the window, put his hands back down to his side, and stepped back 2 steps. The policeman calmly opened the door. He calmly crawled out. And for me, I didn't pay no attention because I was, talk, friendly. And the policeman got to the front wheel on the driver's side, and this man shot him in the wink of your eyes. Just bang, bang, bang.
And what did this man who had shot the officer, what did he do as soon as he had shot him? Did he move back, or did he run, or what?
No, he didn't break out and run fast. He walked fast down the sidewalk, back towards me, and then he seen me. And then he done like this. And of course I did too, and then I slapped my hands upon my face. But I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. What would I do?
Did he say anything at all to you?
He did not. Just like I tell you, I closed my eyes and my hands right there, and then I stayed there a few minutes. And I was going to look and see if he's gone or coming after me or what. And I opened my fingers, and I looked, and he was trotting off down across this lot up here. And he wasn't even out of sight. He saw me go to the policeman. Now, he could have killed me, too. I knew I had to get help for this man. And I knew this police car, all police cars got radios in them. And I'll do what I can to get help for this man. And I tried.
This dog squad, for information, we have a report that an officer has been involved in a shooting in the 400 block of East 10th, 118.
And they hurt me. This man came over to the police car, folded his hands like this, leaned over in the police car, stayed there just a very few minutes. They got back, put his hands down, taking about 2 steps back, and this policeman calmly opened the car door. He calmly crawled out of this car and started around in front of the car. Whether he had a gun, I don't remember that, in his hand. And just as he got even with the front wheel, this man shot him across the hood of the car.
Around the corner, Ted Callaway was tending to business at his used car lot.
Well, Eddie, I was quite upset and excited, I guess, over the shooting of the president, and I was just standing on the front porch of our used car lot office, and I heard some shooting. What sounded to me like 5 shots coming from the back of our office in the direction of 10th Street over here. And as soon as I heard the shooting, well, I come running off the porch out here on the Patton Street, out here on the sidewalk, and I looked up the street toward, that's 10th Street right there, and I could see this man running across the sidewalk and back of the taxi cab over to the other side of Patton Street right here.
Where was he holding this gun when you saw him?
I didn't notice the gun until he was on the other side of the street and running in this direction.
Well, now, when he came down here, and you say he stopped where? About over there in front of that house?
Yes, sir, about 40, 45 feet away. I could see clearly he had this pistol in what we used to, in the Marine Corps, call the raised pistol position. And he wasn't on a dead run, but a good fast trot. And I noticed that he was very pale. He was just deathly white. And I hollered at him. I said, "Man, what in the hell is going on?" And he almost stopped and said something to me which I could not understand, and faced in my direction, still with a pistol in this position, and then continued on down Jefferson in a good fast trot. Not down Jefferson, down Patton.
What did you do, Mr. Callaway, after this man ran around the corner? Where did you go?
I ran down in the direction of the shooting, down toward Patton and 10th Street, and when I rounded the corner, I could see a squad car there. And by this time, there's 2 or 3 or 4 women had gathered round, and I saw Officer Tippett laying in the street. I could tell by looking at him that he was dead. He was laying on his pistol. He had drawn his pistol. His strap on his holster was unsnapped, and I imagine that he had drawn his pistol while he was falling, because he was laying under his left side. So I took the pistol from under him and laid on top of the hood of the squad car. And then I ran to the squad car and called in on the radio and told them that an officer had been shot. And they said that someone else had already reported it, so for me to stay off the air.
Allman was on the streets of downtown Dallas as the motorcade passed through, and you heard shots, did you not?
It happened pretty much in front of me, John. I didn't know that the president was dead until I came back to the newsroom. They wouldn't let us out of the Texas School Book Depository building. As the president turned the corner, we were standing there and broke into applause. As he came around, it's funny because we were remarking among ourselves. Cherry Ford of Radio Promotion was with me, and we were looking up at the open windows of the Texas School Book Depository building and at all that open space, and wondering just how in the world they had already covered all this, and wondering where the Secret Service men were. And right after Mr. Kennedy passed in front of me, I heard one big explosion, and my immediate thought was, like I think most of the people standing around there, this is firecrackers, but it's a pretty poor taste. I looked and saw the president, I thought, duck. Evidently he was slumping at the time. The car immediately sped on. No one seemed galvanized into immediate action. The shots didn't seem rapid at all. They were 3 well-spaced, reverberating shots.
How far were you from the car, Pierce, when the shots were fired?
The car was in the middle of the street, and I was on the left-hand side of the street. I'd say about 10 feet.
And it didn't stop?
No, the car kept going. The car did not stop. The policeman immediately came over and said, all right, hit the dirt. And everyone concerned scrambled right away, including this young man, the young man with the 2 children, Bill Newman, whom I talked to right after it happened. I, like 5 or 6 rather foolish other people, immediately ran up the knoll over there by the viaduct and looked over the fence. We saw nobody except a lot of people running around. And then I headed into the Texas School Book Depository where they were beginning to search. And
well, did you think at that time that the assassin had fired from the building?
Yes, I think this was the consensus at the time, although now I notice Mr. Newman says he felt the shots were fired from the knoll.
No, I see.
I think the logical place to have fired them would have been from the building, and then when I left a few minutes ago, they were still searching. I think the general reaction of the people over there as I left was, it just can't be.
We have this report just received in the 57 radio newsroom that Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left the Dallas hospital where President Kennedy died. Johnson was accompanied by his wife. Newsmen had no opportunity to question him. This report was issued at 1:48, which was just moments ago, and apparently squelches the rumor that the Vice President's physical condition was not in good shape. Apparently he is, because the Associated Press reports now that the Vice President Lyndon Johnson has left Parkland Hospital, where President Kennedy died, accompanied by his wife, Lady Bird, and he spoke to no one as he left. Chris, how many shots did you hear? You heard 3 shots.
I heard 3 well-spaced shots.
Do you think that the shots were returned? Could it be that the assassin fired 1 or 2 shots and possibly one was fired in return, or do you think that all 3 came from the
John,
same gun?
this is possible. However, the 3 I heard a boom, and then a space, and then another boom, and it was not until after the third distinct sound, this third boom, that police were able to draw their revolvers and start firing in return. And of course, it was when they actually were reluctant to fire. I imagine there were a few shots exchanged. I don't remember, frankly, but they were reluctant probably because of all the crowds around. Everyone suddenly popped out with guns and told the public to hug the ground for safety's sake.
John, we just received word from Ron Ryland in the mobile unit that police have a suspect. They picked him up in the Texas Theater. He has a gun. They are taking him to the main station now.
And we call in now Ron Ryland for a report from WFA's mobile unit on that.
Dallas police have taken into custody a white male found in the Texas Theater. The man is believed to be a suspect in the recent shooting of a police officer at 10th and Crawford in Oak Cliff. A witness at the scene of the killing said that the police officer talked briefly with the young man, and the young man then shot the police officer twice through the head. After a furious search up and down Jefferson Avenue, the officers finally found the suspect that they have taken into custody in the Jefferson Theater, armed with a weapon. He is now en route to the Central Police Station. From the scene, this is Vic Robertson reporting for WFAA News.
Well, apparently the assassin has been apprehended. We have no official confirmation of that, but apparently he was the one.
We do have an interview with Officer Paul Benton, who assisted in the capture of Lee Oswald in the Texas Theater, which occurred about an hour and a half after President Kennedy was shot.
He's fought with us like a wild man, and we finally subdued him and took him on out, put him in the police car and brought him into the Homicide Bureau.
Who did he aim the gun at?
The gun wasn't necessarily aimed. He started to pull it up to aim it, and Officer McDonald had a hold of the gun. I had a hold of his right arm. We got a thumb or something in between the hammer and the firing pin to prevent it from actually firing, and it just snapped slightly and kept it from going off.
It didn't misfire. In other words, you prevented it from firing.
Yes, a hand was possibly prevented from firing.
But there was a bullet in the chamber.
Definitely so, and it had been hit with a firing pin, but not enough to go off.
Did he say what was reported about he got him a president?
No, sir, I didn't hear that.
What did he say to you after he was arrested?
He just said, this is it. It's all over with now.
Anything else?
Give any indication that he thought you were looking for him in connection with the president's assassination?
No.
Did you say you put your thumb or your finger on it?
Don't know. It was in the scuffle there. We don't know whether the thumb, finger, or hand. I got a bruised hand from it. I don't know.
Did you have the feeling that gun had been used before?
I don't know. I didn't look at it enough to say for sure.
This was a darkened theater, wasn't it, sir?
No, we had the lights on.
You had the lights on?
Lights were on.
What kind of attitude would you say he had? An arrogant one?
Very belligerent, arrogant attitude throughout the whole thing.
Did he mention Russia or communism or anything to you?
No, he did not.
He didn't mention the president or anything like that?
No, he did not.
This is it, it's all over.
That's right.
Did he ever talk in a foreign language?
No, he did not.
Do you think he had any compasses?
I don't know. I didn't see any others, no.
Mr. Mendez, are you familiar with this subject?
No,
This is a Dallas police detective describing how Oswald was captured yesterday in a Dallas theater.
With us here in the studios of WFAA TV in Dallas are two members of the Dallas Police Department, two brave men who took part in the apprehension yesterday of Lee Harvey Oswald. To refresh your memory, Oswald was actually captured several hours after the assassination of the president in a theater some distance from the assassination scene. He was found inside this theater and apprehended. On my right, Detective Paul Bentley, and on my left, Patrolman M.N. McDonald. I believe, Patrolman McDonald, you were involved first in going into the theater. Could you describe for us what happened?
Well, I walked into the rear exit after a person had pointed out a person had run into the theater in a suspicious way, and there was about 15 people inside the theater at the time, and there's one person sitting back there alone near the rear of the theater, and as I approached him about 1 foot from him, he jumped out of his seat and held his hands up and says, "This is it." And he hit me in the face with his fist, blooding my nose, and I immediately grabbed him, and he went for his gun that was in his waist. And I went at the same time, and we were struggling in there, and I received a scratch on my cheek, evidently from the hammer of the gun as it came out of his belt. And as it was coming out, he snapped the trigger on the pistol, which misfired, luckily.
Was the pistol loaded?
Yes, fully loaded. It had 6 rounds in it.
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
Well, not this desperate, no, sir.
What was his mental state at the time of capture? Was he hysterical or screaming or...
He was cool and calm up until the time that he made that jump for me. And the whole time I watched him, as I approached him, he was calm. He didn't move, he didn't flinch.
Detective Bentley, could you tell us your part in the apprehension?
Yes, sir. I was out on the 10th Street address where Patrolman J.D. Tippett had been shot, and we received the information that the suspect had just entered the Texas Theater. Captain Talbert of the Radio Patrol and myself went to the Texas Theater, and Captain Talbert let me out to go in the front while he covered the rear of the theater. On entering the theater, I went to the balcony where I was told that this suspect had gone to. Assisting me up there were several uniformed officers, and I advised them to search the people in the balcony, and I proceeded to go down to the lower floor. Just as I got to the back of the theater, I noticed the scuffling that was going on between Patrolman McDonald and this suspect. I immediately, in some way, I don't know how, I sprained my ankle in getting over the seats to aid Patrolman McDonald, but in aiding him, I twisted my ankle, causing some severe strain to my ankle. At the time I got a hold of the suspect, Patrolman McDonald was scuffling with him, trying to get the gun away from him, and by the time we got him pretty well subdued, we had the assistance of 4 or 5 other patrolmen and other officers.
I believe the crutches behind me are evidence of the injuries you suffered in yesterday's capture. What would be your description of the suspect at the time?
At the time I encountered the suspect, of course, he was resisting and fighting and scuffling with Patrolman McDonald, and of course scuffling with the rest of us. He was subdued and handcuffed and was making several remarks as we removed him from the theater out to the squad waiting to transport him down to Homicide and Robbery Bureau. I accompanied the officers to Homicide and Robbery Bureau in the squad and talked with the suspect on the way to the City Hall. His comment was, "Why are you placing me in jail when all I have done is carried a pistol into a theater?" We explained to him that he was being placed in jail for suspicion of murder regarding the patrolman J.D. Tippett. He stated he had not shot anyone at that time and became very belligerent on the way to the City Hall. We advised him that he could do his talking a little bit later. He was then taken and turned over to Captain Fritz.
You made no mention to him of the possible charges of murdering the president at that time?
No, sir, I did not myself, because at the time of the arrest I had no knowledge whatsoever that this might possibly be our suspect in regards to the assassination of the president.
Detective Bentley, I understand that you are one of the top polygraph experts for the city. As you undoubtedly know, the suspect has refused a lie detector examination, but certainly with your experience with criminals, would you care to make any estimation about how he might survive? Is he that cool, calm, and collected, or what would you do?
My personal feeling at this time certainly would not be the proper time to give the suspect a polygraph examination after being continuously interrogated by our officers. I think that there's no doubt in my mind that the suspect would be a fit polygraph suspect or subject possibly in a day or two when he calms down a little bit. But he is rather upset at this time, and I feel like a polygraph examination in the future would be very good if he would submit to it.
Do you believe that he at that time was at all afraid that you were placing him under suspicion for the murder of the president?
He certainly didn't appear that way, not a bit, not in the least.
Was he unlike most of your confrontations of this nature, or would you say that he was pretty typical? I mean, anything unique or different about him is what I'm after.
No, sir. I think, in my experience with this particular type person, I think he reacted about the same as the rest of them would, not admitting any particular thing that he had done and refusing to give us any additional information when questioned regarding the shooting of Officer J.D. Tippett. I asked for his name and he refused to give me his name. I removed his wallet from his back pocket and obtained his identification. And I also asked him if he was still living at the Ellsbury address, and he says, well, you find out for yourself.
What kind of identification did he have?
The card that I got this information from was a Dallas Public Library card. He had other identifications such as driver's license, I believe, and credit cards and things like that.
Did you make at the time any radical statements that you might associate with extreme left political views?
No, sir, he did not. He made no radical statements whatsoever.
I believe now we are going to the Dallas City Jail, where the mother and wife of suspect Lee Harvey Oswald are entering the doorway into the elevator room, I believe. Isn't that right, Detective Bentley?
Yes, sir, that's right.
That will transfer them from the third floor, the homicide office doorway in the background, to the upstairs jail cell where Lee Harvey Oswald has been held now for almost 24 hours.
Right.
Of course, we are waiting for the transfer of suspect Oswald to the county jail, which is still expected sometime this afternoon. Patrolman McDonald, in your experiences with suspects and the capture of such individuals, did you find anything unique or strange or different about Lee Harvey Oswald?
Well, not anything you can put your finger on, but he acted just like anybody else would, be carrying a pistol, because he reached for it immediately as soon as I grabbed a hold of him. And in my experiences with suspects of this nature, they're all pretty calm unless they have recently or within the few minutes had committed some sort of crime. But he had time enough between the time he had the suspected killing of the J.D. Tippett to control his nature, and he was quite calm and cool.
Did you realize at the time that you may be capturing the man who very possibly could be charged and perhaps convicted of assassinating the president?
Well, I had no link in that at all, because I didn't know. I was just looking for this suspect that we had a meager description of, that had shot and killed Officer J.D. Tippett. And I didn't have any association with the shooting of the president at all with this particular subject.
How do you feel now that Oswald has been formally charged with the assassination of the president?
Well, I feel relieved quite a bit, because the whole nation has recorded this shot, and I'm glad that we caught him here in Dallas instead of waiting around him up later on.
Dallas has every reason to be proud of its police department today. We've been talking with Detective Paul Bentley and Patrolman M.D. McDonald, two of the men who played a key role in the capture of Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who Dallas police now say they believe is the man who murdered President John Kennedy. This is Roger Sharp reporting from the studios of WFAA-TV in Dallas.
The press room here at Parkland Hospital, which was set up within a matter of minutes by Parkland Hospital officials on the first floor of the building, is in something of a state of shock at this moment. Just now,
reporters are beginning to realize what had happened. They acted on reflex right at first and continued to act so for the next hour or so, but by now a kind of state of shock is beginning to set in. WFAA-TV newsman Mal Koch has just come to the mobile news unit. Mal, what's the situation?
Well, we're not sure right now, Walt. It looks like that Mrs. Kennedy may still be here and may be in a state of shock. Of course, there are many rumors that are floating around. It's also believed that part of Governor John Connolly's family has arrived, possibly one of his sons. At this point, this is all that I know from the emergency exit of Parkman. However, Walt, I could tell an interesting story of what happened because I was within 50 to 75 feet behind the president. Go ahead. We had just turned the corner, the motorcade had just turned the corner at, I believe it's Young and Elm. Is this correct?
Elm and Houston.
Elm and Houston, I'm sorry. Overlooking the street is a large building by the name of the Texas School Book Depository. Right. Just as the president's car turned the corner, I heard a loud shot that sounded like at first a backfire. And then I heard another one. And then finally a third shot. We naturally took this third shot as a rifle shot because we figured by the third shot that this was not a backfire. It was not a motorcycle backfiring, but it was actually someone taking a crack at the president. Just as our car rounded the corner, we saw the president's car speed off. I had my camera in my hand and raised it and to see an officer fall and pull his pistol. I took a shot of that, and then to my right, two ladies fell to the ground, and one of them had fainted. People were running hither and there, hither and yon. Up in the window, I could not tell what the person looked like, but I saw the rifle being pulled back into the window. This was the 5th or 6th floor. There were people underneath the rifle who looked up to see where the shots had come from. One man started running down the street with his little boy, his little child, and several policemen began running after him, thinking that he was the man that had fired the shot. However, he turned out not to be. There was much confusion around there. I noticed on the sidewalk, Walt, some blood. At this time, I don't know whose blood it was, but there was some blood on the sidewalk away from the street. It must not have been the president's blood. The motorcade then sped off, and I was left in mass confusion to try to grope my way out to Parkland Hospital.
Thank you very much, Mel, for that eyewitness report. Ironically, within just a matter of seconds before these fatal shots were fired, Mrs. Connolly commented to President Kennedy, you certainly can't say that Dallas is an unfriendly city, because they were beaming over the outstanding reception they had received, not only in downtown Dallas, but all along the way. Just a matter of seconds after that, the first shot was fired, which struck President Kennedy in the head, and the shot which eventually resulted in his death here at Parkland Hospital.
We take you to ABC newsman Roger Sharp, reporting from Dallas Police Headquarters.
With me here on the 3rd floor of the Dallas Police Station is Justice of the Peace David Johnston of the 2nd Precinct of Dallas County, before whom suspect Lee Oswald was formally charged tonight with the murder of President Kennedy. Judge Johnston, could you read for us the official affidavit?
This is in the name of and by the authority of the state of Texas. Personally appeared before me, the undersigned authority, this affiant, who after being by me duly sworn disposes and says, your affiant has good reason to believe and does believe that one Lee Harvey Oswald, hereinafter styled defendant, heretofore on or about the 22nd day of November, A.D. 1963, in the county of Dallas and state of Texas, did then and there unlawfully, voluntarily and with malice of forethought kill John F. Kennedy by shooting him with a gun against the peace and dignity of the state attested by J.W. Fritz, a Fayette, sworn to and subscribed before me this 22nd day of November 1963, Henry Wade, Criminal District Attorney, Dallas County, Texas, which complaint was then passed to me at 11:26 p.m. and filed as cause number F-154, the State of Texas versus Lee Harvey Oswald for the offense of murder.
Did you read this before the suspect?
This complaint has not been read to the suspect. The prior complaint filed at a little after 7 o'clock last night was read to the defendant, and he was advised that he was remanded to the custody of the sheriff of Dallas County with no bond as a capital offense.
What was his reaction when the affidavit was read?
He had a few little remarks to make. I don't remember them exactly. He had a little misunderstanding about what this formal arraignment was, of it appraising him of the charges that had been brought against him.
Judge Johnston, is this normal routine for a homicide?
This is the normal procedure in the state of Texas.
And both affidavits charging him with the murder of the president and the murder of Patrolman Tippett are identical?
Other than the name of John F. Kennedy inserted on one and the name of Officer Tippett on the other, and of course the time they were filed.
What is your personal reaction to the suspect?
I have not been with him long enough to have formed any personal feeling about the man. I can't say anything at all about him because I was only in the room with him for some 5 or so minutes to arraign him on the first count.
He now has been formally booked and taken to an isolated cell on the 5th floor of this same building. Apparently there will be some more questioning tonight. What legally are the next steps in a case such as this?
The defendant can now either be brought before my court for an examining trial, at which time the certain evidences will be introduced to sustain the no bond set in the capital offense to establish that the offense has been committed. This can also in Texas be waived, and if it is waived, then it goes to the grand jury. If the hearing is held, then it is passed to the grand jury for their action.
What would you expect from this case?
This you cannot say, because when he does have legal counsel, that counsel could ask for an examining trial, and under the rules of the Texas law, he is entitled to this prior to his indictment by the grand jury.
Thank you very much, Judge Johnston.
Thank you, sir.
Justice of the Peace David Johnston of the 2nd Precinct of Dallas County, before whom the suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, was formally charged tonight, early this morning, with the assassination of President John Kennedy. He read to you the formal affidavit. The suspect, as we said, is now on the 5th floor of this building, where he was being held under heavy guard in an isolated cell of the city jail. He more than likely will be questioned again by interrogators during the night and again tomorrow. The District Attorney Henry Wade stated that he believed the case would more than likely go before the grand jury here in Dallas sometime in the middle of next week. That's the story, up to the minute, from Dallas. This is Roger Sharp reporting.
And there you have the complete wrap-up. This is Bob Walker speaking in behalf of the entire ABC News team here at WFAA-TV in Dallas with Jay Watson, Bob Clark, Bill Lord, wishing you a good night, a good morning from Dallas, Texas. Now back to ABC News in New York.
I think it would not be inappropriate at this time to say that all of us at ABC News in New York are intensely proud of the job that has been done by our staff at WFAA-TV today in covering this story under very difficult circumstances, particularly in the early hours.
Get your initials first, Mr. Nichols. My name is H. Louis Nichols. Louis Nichols. I'm Nichols. I am the president of the Dallas Bar Association, the organized bar here in Dallas. We had been advised that statements had been made that Mr. Oswald was unable to get any Dallas lawyer who would make any inquiry about representation, or that he was unable to get any representation here in Dallas. when I heard about that this afternoon, I decided that I should come down and make inquiry as to whether or not he was represented by counsel, whether or not he desired to be represented by counsel, and whether or not he would ask the Dallas Bar Association to furnish representation to him. I have just visited with him in his cell, and he advises that his first preference is that he be represented by a lawyer in New York, whose name I believe is John Abt, A-B-T. He then stated that if he could not be represented by that individual, he would like to have a lawyer who was a member of the American Civil Liberties Union represent him. He said that if he was unable to get anyone from that organization, why then he might call upon the local bar association to represent him. I asked him whether or not at this time he was asking the Dallas Bar Association to do anything toward representing him, and he advised that he was not, that he did not desire that we take any steps toward obtaining representation for him, and that if he was unable to obtain the other representation, he might at a later time ask us to do so, and did ask that I would check back with him at a later time to see whether or not there would be any necessity or desirability that we attempt to furnish representation for him. Having contacted him and satisfied myself that he was not being deprived of representation by an attorney, and having satisfied myself that he did not desire to be represented by a Dallas attorney, I then left, and that's the situation as it exists right now. My name is H. Louis Nichols, L-O-U-I-S-N-I-C-H-O-L-S.
Did you talk about anything else other than the...
He didn't discuss the details of it. I did not ask him anything. He appeared to me to be perfectly rational, and I could observe no abnormalities about him at all in the short time that I visited with him.
What do you know about John Abt?
I don't know anything about him.
You're going to try to contact Abt?
No, I'm not.
What did he say? What did that lawyer?
He didn't say.
He didn't say, he didn't give any reason?
He didn't give any reason. I didn't ask him.
Well, who's going to try and get Abt?
I don't know.
How long were you waiting?
About 3 minutes.
Did he say how he was trying to contact Mr. Abt?
He said he had talked to members of his family this afternoon, and they would endeavor to get in touch with Mr. Abt.
What was his mood when you talked to Mr. Nichols? Did he seem... Union was his second choice?
He said he was a member of that organization and would like to have a lawyer who was a member of that organization represent him.
Does he personally know Abt?
I don't know.
How would you describe his mood? Is he calm?
Well, he appeared to be calm, and...
Is he defiant?
I didn't understand you.
Is he defiant?
Defiant? He did not appear to be defiant. He discussed the matter with me in a very rational way and very calm way, and we discussed the matter, and I satisfied myself that he knew what he was talking about and didn't desire my services or the services of any member of the Dallas Bar Association.
Does he fully understand the charges against him?
I don't know.
You didn't discuss it?
I did not discuss the charge with him.
As a lawyer, do you feel the fact that he does not have one here would hurt the prosecution's case?
I do not believe so, since he is not asking for a lawyer to represent him at this time.
Do you think it's possible to get an impartial jury?
Probably. In Dallas, it is.
The question was asked, may I ask it again, is it possible for this man to get an impartial jury? Would you answer that again, please?
Well, in my opinion, it is.
I think he can get a fair trial in Dallas.
I think he can get a fair trial in Dallas.
You will understand, sir, that you and the Bar Association will help him get an attorney only if it is not Mr. Abt or the ACLU. In other words, if it is a Dallas attorney. Is that correct, sir?
Well, I have no control over any other attorney. I have no control over any attorney except myself. It is the feeling of the Dallas Bar Association that an indigent defendant should be represented. And one of the programs of the association is to furnish lawyers to represent defendants in criminal cases who are unable to provide their own attorneys.
Have you had any calls from anyone in your organization about handling this case?
I have had some inquiry about whether or not there were any Dallas lawyers representing this man, and I made inquiry and determined that apparently there are none at this time. He hasn't requested any representative.
Is the Dallas Bar Association the integrated part of the Supreme Court 20%
It's a voluntary bar association. The State Bar of Texas is the integrated bar. The Dallas Bar Association is a voluntary association.
Does the representation of indigent people include communists? Has a communist ever been so represented in Dallas?
I don't know.
Did you mention anything about his financial means?
I did not. I merely asked him whether or not he desired to have an attorney appointed by the association to assist him, and he said no.
Were these calls from people in the attorney profession, or were they from citizens? Really?
They were other lawyers that I'm acquainted with.
They were anxious to...
No, so they made inquiry as to whether or not the Dallas Bar Association was doing anything to see whether or not this man could obtain local representation, and I decided I'd find out.
Were these local members you called? Would be willing to represent him?
I have not talked to any attorneys at all about it.
Would you be willing to represent him?
I do not practice criminal law and have never tried a criminal case, so I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Here comes Oswald down the hall again.
Did you find that rifle? That dispatches you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges.
Oswald has hustled through a doorway.
Not committed any acts of violence.
He says he has nothing against anybody. He has not committed any act of violence. Now, as a final note, I have in my hand the official complaint called a beef sheet made out in the assassination of President Kennedy. And it says in part, the expired was riding in a motorcade with wife and Governor John Connally and his wife. Witnesses heard gunshot and saw the expired slump forward. More shots were heard, and the expired fell into his wife's lap. Governor Connally was also shot at this time. Car in which they were riding was escorted to Parkland Hospital by Dallas police officers. So, in official language, is summed up the death of a president.
CBS newsman Lew Wood sought out and found Mrs. Gladys Johnson, the woman from whom Oswald has been renting an apartment located in another section of town from where the man's wife and baby lived.
What kind of a man was he, Mrs. Johnson?
He seemed very mannerly and very tidy. He was very tidy with himself.
Would you consider him an educated man?
Well, yes, I think, not highly educated, but I think that he had better than the average person's education.
Spoke nicely and so on?
Spoke very nice English.
What about his habits? Was he friendly and talked to people?
No, he didn't.
Tell me what he did.
Well, he just taken care of his own business. He only come in the living room occasionally and look at the television, and he'd go back to his room.
He would sit here and look at TV with you?
The entire, maybe 6 or 8 would be in the living room.
Other roomers here too? He would sit in here with us. Did he ever carry on a conversation with you?
No, never did. No one. Never carried on
perhaps ever make any comments about things that he saw and heard on TV?
He didn't. He didn't make comments on anything.
Do you know whether he ever made any phone calls?
Yes, he sure did. He'd make 1 or 2 phone calls, usually in the afternoons after coming in from work. And they would always be they wouldn't be in English.
Not in English?
Not in English.
What kind of a language was he speaking in?
Either, I presume, German or Russian. I don't know.
Did anybody ever call him here?
I never did take a call for him at all.
How about friends? Do you know whether he had any friends, or did you ever see any?
Never did. No, sir. Sure didn't.
During his daily routine, when would he leave and return and things like that?
Well, I would be at work at 5:15 in the morning. I didn't know what time he left, but he did go to work, and he'd return around 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon.
Do you know
I have been at home a few times when he'd returned.
Did you know where he worked?
No, I didn't.
How about weekends? What did he do then?
He was only here over one weekend.
When was that?
This past weekend. The other times, he would leave usually on a Friday evening, and he would return on a Monday evening.
So but he did stay here this past weekend?
Yes, he did. He did not go out of town over this weekend.
Did you notice any change in
Not one bit in the world. Not one bit.
What kind of belongings did he have in that small room? Do you know?
No, I don't. Just very few. Very few clothes and very few books.
What kind of books were they?
From what we've seen, it was on communism. We just glanced at the backs of the books as the detectives.
Did the officers today take his possessions?
Yes, everything.
Every one of his possessions?
Everything.
What did they say when they left?
They said that he wouldn't be returning.
The landlady of the charged Lee Oswald.
Well, since I've been this attorney, I've tried 24 death penalty cases, which we asked the death penalty.
And how many death verdicts did you get?
23.
You're going to try this personally?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And what was your decision on that, sir? Why did you make that decision?
This proper case for the death penalty. This is a proper case for the death penalty. Is that what?
Why did you decide to try this personally yourself?
Well, I generally try the major cases, and I believe this will be classed as a major case.
And he is going to be, I would imagine, yes, it would.
Are you elected or appointed?
I'm elected every 4 years. I'm starting my 5th term. I'm in my 1st year, my 5th term, serving a 4-year term.
Mr. Wade, do you expect to call Mrs. Kennedy or Governor Connolly, if he's able, in this trial as witnesses?
We will not unless it's absolutely necessary, and at this point I don't think it'll be necessary.
How soon could we expect a trial?
I'd say around the middle of January.
Could I recap a few high points of the things you've said with you, Mr. Wade? First of all, has the investigation, in your opinion, advanced materially today?
I'm not familiar with all of the advancing. It's mostly routine today, interviewing witnesses at the scene, and I don't know everything that's been done, but I think it's progressing satisfactorily.
Now, the pace in the questioning of Oswald seems to have dropped off sharply in comparison to last night. Is there any particular reason for that?
None that I know of.
Now, you talked to Oswald for about how long?
Practically none, personally.
But have you observed him for a number of hours?
I've seen him a time or two, but I didn't get the interrogation started before I got down here, and I left them with it.
Well, from what you've seen, how do you sum him up as a man, based on your experience with criminal types?
Oh, I think it's a man that planned this murder weeks or months ago and has laid his plans carefully and carried them out, and has planned at that time what he's going to tell the police that are questioning him at present.
Well, in these plans, do you have any inkling as to the why, the reason for it?
No, very little.
It's commonly supposed, because of his affection for Castro's Cuba and communism, that he was led to engineer this plot.
I can't say whether that was it. Apparently, on its face, that contributed quite a bit to it.
You characterize Oswald as superior in intelligence?
I'd say above average.
What about any other personality traits that you can detect in him? Because, as you know, anybody who would attempt something so heinous and complex as this must present an interesting personality to the world.
I'm sure it does, but I know very little about personality, psychology, and the like. I'm not an authority by any means on that.
Has he ever expressed any hatred or ill will to President Kennedy, or for that matter, any regret over his death?
He has expressed no regret that I know of. I don't know about the other.
Now, his wife and his mother and his brother are talking to him, I believe, right now up on the 4th floor. Is there any hope that they might convince him to confess?
I don't know. I understand they want him to.
Have they expressed that wish to the police officials?
That I don't know. his brother indicated that to me, that he thought he ought to tell the truth about it.
Are the two brothers close, do you know?
I doubt it. Robert hasn't seen him since November a year ago. They've been living right here within...
This man, it seems, wasn't close to anybody. Have you discovered any close friends in Dallas?
No, sir.
This in itself suggests a certain type of personality that perhaps is inward, can do without people, can be perhaps dedicated?
Not mixing with other people very much.
It's rumored that perhaps this case would be tried by a military court because, of course, President Kennedy is our commander-in-chief.
I don't know anything about that. We have him charged in the state court, and he's a state prisoner at present.
And you will conduct the trial?
Yes, sir, I plan to.
Full verdict?
We'll ask the death penalty.
How many cases of this type have you been involved in? That is, when the death penalty is involved.
Since I've been district attorney, I've asked the death penalty in 24 cases.
And how many times have you attained it?
23.
Here comes Oswald down the hall again.
Did you find that rifle? That's dispatches you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges.
Oswald has hustled through a doorway.
Not committed any acts of violence.
He says he has nothing against anybody. He has not committed any act of violence. Oswald makes this claim as he's hustled from the interrogation room through a doorway, down an elevator, up an elevator into his jail cell. His face is very badly discolored, the results of a scuffle with police when he was apprehended the other day. Now, Oswald has made his latest flat denials in the face of a mounting pile of evidence against him. The last links in this case seem to be hammered into place tonight. Police have traced a rifle purchased in Chicago by mail order for $12.78. They've traced it to Oswald. He bought it under the alias of A. Heidel. Handwriting experts have established that the handwriting on the purchase order was, in fact, made by Oswald.
This is Detective Jim Leavelle, who was this morning handcuffed to Oswald and was bringing him out to the car to be transferred to the county jail. Could you tell us what happened?
We were proceeding with the prisoner as scheduled from the jail office out to the ramp where the automobile was waiting. And as we reached the area where the car was parked, the man from the crowd emerged, and there was 100 or more newspapermen and cameramen in the area, and it was almost a solid wall of flesh in front of us and to our left, composed of the news media. When we came through the door with Oswald, they began taking their pictures, and in the issuing time that they were snapping pictures and talking, I saw this man come from the crowd, and at the time he emerged from this crowd of people, he was not more than 6 or 7 feet from me. And I dare say that had I known that he was going to be there, the swiftness with which it happened, I doubt if anyone could have prevented it.
Did you see the gun in his hand as he came?
I saw the gun in his hand as he emerged from the crowd. But being such a short distance from me, I had no time to say anything. I did jerk Oswald to try to jerk him behind me.
Now, you were handcuffed to him?
I was handcuffed to him and also had a hold of the waistband of his trousers. I tried to jerk him behind me, but he had and I reached up and caught a hold of Jack Ruby's shoulder, left shoulder, and shoved back on him. At the same time pulling on Oswald. But he had this .38 snub-nosed pistol, and all he had to do was pull the trigger. It was a double-action gun, and therefore it only took, the whole episode only took a matter of a second to take place.
Now, when Oswald fell to the ground, was he unconscious at that point?
I would say if he was not, he was nearly so. Just as soon as my partner on the other side, Mr. Graves, grabbed Jack's hand with the gun in such a manner that he couldn't fire it anymore.
Did he try to fire it again?
Yes, he was still, with his left hand, he had the gun in his right hand, he was trying to pull it around, and I could tell that he was still trying to snap the pistol. But Mr. Graves had it in such a manner that he couldn't fire it anymore.
Did you speak to the victim on the ground?
Yes, I immediately picked him up then with another officer, I don't remember who that was, and carried him back inside the jail office to get him away from the area. And I tried to talk to him and ask him if he could hear me and if he understood me. He never did answer me, and his eyes were partially closed. As far as I know, he never regained consciousness.
How has this affected the morale, the spirit of the police force?
Well, I think that I can probably speak for all the officers here, that I've heard many of them comment on it, and I think that they all feel very deeply about it. They regret the incident happening. We regret the shooting that occurred to the president on Friday, and certainly this hasn't helped their feelings any at all. Mr. Ruby didn't better our cause any by shooting Oswald.
Did you recognize him when he came through?
Yes, I have known Jack Ruby for a number of years, and I recognized him just as soon as he emerged from the crowd.
But even if you knew he was coming, you say you didn't have the time to react to prevent it.
He was so close from the human wall of flesh of reporters there that it would have been impossible to have stopped him.
Thank you very much, Detective. The story of what happened when Lee Harvey Oswald was killed this morning. This is Bill Lord reporting from the Dallas Police Station.
Also here in the studio, WFAA News Director Bob Walker. Bob, what's new?
Just learned from City Hall from a very authoritative source that police are working on the assumption that there indeed is a connection between Jack Ruby and Lee Oswald, and that in some manner of speaking, Oswald's murder was to shut him up.
Mrs. Ruth Paine probably knew the Lee Harvey Oswald family better than anybody living today. Mrs. Paine has agreed to this interview, her first for KRLD News. Mrs. Paine, how did this friendship between you and the Oswalds first originate?
I first met the Oswalds at a party in Dallas last winter, and then saw Marina several times after that at their apartment. I was interested in knowing her first simply because she was a Russian and spoke the language well. I've been trying to learn it, and of course the best way is to speak with someone who does know it.
Is this a particularly unusual liking of yours, languages in general, or the Russian language in particular?
I have been interested in languages for some time, studied French and German, and then took up Russian after I was out of college. I was working with a young Quaker national group that was trying to bring about greater international understanding in their own small way, and wanted to, we actually did an exchange of young Russians to this country and Americans to Russia. And we found we only had one person in the country who could speak the language. When you begin to prepare an exchange of this sort, it helps a great deal to have the language.
Well, did you have a liking for Mrs. Oswald immediately, or the Oswalds, let's say the Oswald couple immediately, were the type of couple you hit it off with, so to speak?
Well, I didn't really get to know him at all. I visited with her and her little girl. We once had them over to dinner, and he talked something of his beliefs then. It was the first I knew that he was a Marxist. He declared himself so. I felt that that his logic didn't hold together at all. And I declined to argue with him because he was quite rigid in his views and wasn't about to be changed.
Did he seem argumentative at the time?
No, just settled in his beliefs, and if you didn't think it was that way, well, you just weren't right.
Did you discuss democracy or any opposite belief with him, or did you just...
I didn't discuss it at all. I listened while my husband talked with him about it, and felt it was the best I could do to stay out of it. It just wasn't, to my mind, a conversation that would go in any useful direction.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald himself live here in this house with you and the rest of the Oswald family?
No, he never stayed here. His wife was here from the end of September till the time of the shooting. But he visited perhaps several weekends during that time and stayed over the night when he came out then. But he had a room in town. I never did know the address, in fact, of the room where he stayed.
Well, why was it that Mrs. Oswald and the children stayed here and Lee Harvey Oswald stayed in Dallas?
Well, they were having financial difficulties at the time. I had, as I've already said, known them here in Dallas before they moved to New Orleans, where he got work over the summer. Stopped by and saw them in New Orleans coming home from a vacation trip and found he was out of work again. She was just a month away from delivering a baby, and I suggested that since she could get county care here, as they qualified as one-year residents here in Texas, that it would be better for her to come here, and I could help make the necessary arrangements. It would be necessary, of course, to translate, so that she could be admitted to a hospital. And I think Lee Oswald was somewhat relieved to accept that suggestion. And it was then that I first felt he cared for his family. It was the first I had seen that he really did care and was interested in their welfare.
Did he at any time during that period seem distraught or upset or particularly nervous when you saw him?
No, not at any time.
In what way? You say he showed some feeling for his family. Did he display affection toward his wife, Marina?
Oh, yes, and especially toward his little girl, June. Going to be 2 in February. They played together. He would help feed June supper sometimes and help with the bath occasionally. He liked her very much. He was pleased that there was a new baby.
Did he play with them on the floor here in your house when he came to visit Marina on the weekends, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Describe something, in other words, how would he play with the children? I'm trying to...
Well, we'd have a lot of playground equipment in the backyard. He'd help her on the slide, going up and down, or he often watched the television when he was here. I'd say he spent most of the weekend watching television, watching football. And he would play both with Junie or with my little boy, just as he lay on the floor watching the television.
Did your children seem to like him? Did they display affection for him?
Well, they hardly knew him that well. He wasn't here that much. That they got really to feel close to him.
They didn't have any pet names for him or anything of that nature?
They knew that was Junie's papa.
How long did this friendship then with yours, with Marina, and going over the languages, you helping her with English and she helping you with Russian, how long did this go on, actually?
That was from the end of September when we arrived here from New Orleans. You see, I picked her and their little girl, June, up in New Orleans on my way back from this vacation. And we got here the 24th of September, and then she was here until the 23rd of November.
The fact that you were in a position to, in a manner of speaking, entertain the Oswalds here and actually feed them, prepare their meals. Could you tell me something about his personal likes and dislikes? Was there any dish that he particularly liked? Or
A number of people ask that, and I just don't see it's relevant. But, he liked potatoes very much, and his wife usually cooked them. Nothing particularly marked.
Mrs. Paine, by way of explanation, let me say that I think the interest of this sort of thing is in any facet of the man's character or personality is going to be of interest not only now but for years and years to come. And incidentally, in that regard, did you, in the pictures in which we have seen him, he never was dressed up. He never wore a tie and coat, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see him dressed well, like, as to go to...
Well, he always was clean and careful about his appearance in one sense, but I guess he didn't. I don't recall him wearing a coat and tie, no.
When you saw him on television, for example, at the police station, were you surprised at his appearance?
No.
In other words, the fact that he was...
Nor was I surprised that he asked for a shower, which was reported also.
But, I mean, his unshaven appearance and that sort of thing didn't...
I don't recall that.
Why did Marina and Lee Harvey Oswald first come to Dallas? Do you think...
well, they came last year. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Not when she came here to stay with me, but the previous time.
Right.
He came here and got work. Now, why, I don't know. I didn't even know them then.
His interest here in this house seemed to go more to his children.
Yes, that's true.
Would you say that he loved his wife?
I think so. I do feel that, whether love is the right word or not, it was certainly his most warm human contact with her and with the children. I felt that he valued it very much, recognized that it was perhaps the most important thing he had. I didn't treat it too well.
Did you feel at any time before this awful thing happened that he had not treated it too well? Was this in your own mind, in other words?
Well, it was his act that I meant to say.
Yes, I know.
Treating it well.
But before the act ever came up, before this ever came up, did you feel that might be a possibility?
Well, I didn't see things myself that made me feel it.
Well, was the gun found here, or was the gun originally in the garage at this residence, or?
I think that's not. At least I don't know. As nearly as I can make out, the gun was here, but it certainly wasn't when the officers came to search on Friday afternoon.
You never saw it here, actually, in the garage? Or
I had no idea that he had one. If I'd known, I probably would have told him to take it elsewhere, because I don't approve of guns at all.
Marina Oswald has been quoted in some manner as saying that she believed her husband had shot at General Walker. Had she ever mentioned that to you?
Oh, no.
Do you personally, from what you know of Marina, do you think she would have told you this if this had been true?
Would have thought she would. We talked as friends, but I can't know.
Do you think that perhaps you knew Marina Oswald as well or better than anyone in America?
I really don't know. While my Russian improved while she was here, it still was far from fluent. And I think that made some difficulty for free conversation. I just don't know.
You were under circumstances learning her language and she learning yours to closely examine her intelligence. Would you estimate her as being of average, above average, below average intelligence?
Oh, she's certainly above average. I think quite a bright girl. We talked a good bit about medicine since she had been a pharmacist. We were making plans at a hospital. She has vocabulary in Latin through her pharmaceutical training. She also expressed to me the wish to get a job as soon as she knew enough English, perhaps working in a laboratory or anywhere where her training could be used.
Did she ever discuss with you her husband having a gun or liking guns in any way?
No, she didn't. She mentioned once that he had been hunting with friends in the Soviet Union. But as she told me about it, she quoted a proverb to the effect that in Russia you go hunting and catch a bottle of vodka. And I got the impression that the hunting or the shooting was not so important. This was a social event.
Oswald has often been described as sullen. Would you describe him that way from the times you saw him?
He did seem to keep his thoughts to himself, and he was hard to reach or hard to know.
Other than playing with the children, did you see many light, gay moments?
No.
You did not during any of the time that he was here? Would you say that, from your opinion and from what you know of Marina, would you say that she is naive about this whole thing, or genuinely puzzled, or what would be your description from what you know of her?
Well, I would guess that she is not now. It's, for a person who hasn't lived with a language barrier, it's hard to understand how much you can miss when you don't know the language. It's a form of not being intelligent, because you don't understand what's being said or being printed around you. I'm sure by now she understands full well, because the Secret Service have had a translator with her, able to explain to her. But without that help, she wouldn't be able to understand.
Did Lee Harvey Oswald know how to drive?
I was trying to help him learn while he was here. 2 Sunday afternoons, or perhaps 3, we went over to a empty shopping parking lot and particularly practiced parking there. He didn't have a learner's permit yet, so I didn't let him drive in the street, and he had never, as far as I know, had a driver's permit. He was distinctly, like most beginners, when he'd turn a right-angle turn, why he'd turn a little too far and have to turn back. Or in parking, he'd cramp it too far and get stuck. And he had to learn these things. He did finally learn to park. But he clearly hadn't had any training or any practice.
Did he learn quickly, easily, would you say, or was he difficult to catch on?
I think he learned fairly easily.
Well, during this time, when you were teaching him, did he ever show any anger or impatience at himself? Any evidence that looking back on it, you could have said that this man had a possibility of violence or temper, particularly bad temper?
No, I didn't see violent temper from him. He certainly not driving or really at any time. We were both sitting here on the sofa watching the television when the news came that he had been shot. And I translated that to Marina. And we watched anxiously with the rest of the world to hear what would happen. And finally we did hear that the president was dead. She said to me, "What a terrible thing this is for Mrs. Kennedy, and how sad that now the children will have to grow up without a father."
Do you feel Marina had particular admiration, unusual admiration for President Kennedy?
I think she did, and for Mrs. Kennedy also.
Has she expressed this to you before?
Yes.
Were you aware of any unusual differences between Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina, his wife?
No, I would say nothing that I noticed could be called unusual.
Do you feel that his Marxist leanings were similar to her political beliefs?
She was quite without political beliefs. She didn't take much interest. He, in fact, complained of her that she didn't take more interest in politics. But she's very much interested in her children and in being a good mother, and very involved in that.
Looking back on it now in retrospect, which of course is a much easier thing to do now in retrospect, do you feel now that you might have seen, in other words, do you see now in retrospect things that seem to have meaning?
No, I don't even see it in retrospect, which is remarkable. You would think that if there was that much sickness in a person, it would be evident, even, especially in retrospect. But I don't even see it there. Of course, I'm not trained in psychology or anything. I was very impressed with the report of the psychologist that saw him in New York City at the age of 13. Impressed and, in a sense, depressed that this had been detected in him by a skilled person. And yet they'd had no opportunity to heal him or help him at that time. The family just moved. He watched television here all the time, and they reported that he did at that age, and that the psychologist felt he harbored a great deal of hostility within him. But that part I didn't see.
Did you ever hear the name Jack Ruby?
No.
Do you think there was any connection or previous meeting between Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald?
I think none.
None at all?
None at all.
Because of the circumstances of their life, you mean you don't think they would have had the opportunity to meet? Or?
Well, Lee did not drink, wasn't interested, I'm sure, in nightclubs. Now, I don't know what he did during the week when he was at his room, so it's only a guess on my part.
Do you, again, from what you have seen and so forth, in your personal opinion, do you think Lee Harvey Oswald is the assassin of the president?
Yes, I do.
but because of the evidence which has been
Because of
presented?
the evidence.
And you feel that Marina probably is aware of this also?
Mm-hmm.